Hello, I'm your superhero critic, and I'll stay super as long as you stay awesome. Do I have to explain how bad this movie really is? Do I really have to? Shitty effects, shitty CGI, shitty plot, boring plot. All in all, just makes Incredible Hulk fans extremely angry! So, with that said, come with me to a world of unimagination as I, your superhero critic, dive into the 2003 piece of crap that is Hulk. After a long-ass intro, our movie starts in '69, where an unnamed man is being denied human testing for science experiments before finding out he's going to have a child with his wife, and we watch as the child grows up with his father doing tests on him. The government finds out about the human testing, and it isn't all too happy, forcing Captain Mustache to initiate a gamma failsafe. So really, we are going to go with the literal meaning of comic book movie by turning the movie into a comic book. The transitions are fucking retarded, unnecessary, and half the time don't even make sense on why they put it in. So instead of changing the perspective, like camera's facing here, now it's here. No, they do a little tiny cut to make it look as if it's another comic panel. Oh joy, the movie's just started. It's now the present as we follow an adult Bruce getting to work, awkwardly discussing his relationship with Betty, played by Jennifer Connelly, and their speech they have to make before we start yet another set of gamma experiments, which fails as they instead blow up a frog. They of course discuss the failure over beers, and Betty brings up Bruce's parents, which causes a little argument. Betty is then visited by someone who I think is an old flame, but I can't tell since Connelly shows no emotion outside of boredom, and Bruce reminisces about the past. Can we please leave the moving photos to Harry Potter? In the past, Betty talks to Bruce about a dream, so we can go even further to the past of Betty during the gamma explosion and saying the dream had Bruce himself choking her. After Bruce wakes up to a creepy man with dogs staring at him from across the street, he turns down the offer from Blondie in the suit to make soldiers using their studies instead of helping everybody out. During another experiment, Bruce is forced to jump in front of a gamma ray to save his worker.
Harper, get out! Get out!
In the hospital, Betty cries over the fact she almost lost Bruce, and that night, the creepy guy who's been stalking Bruce visits him in the hospital, trying to get him to remember his past, and that he is actually his father who had been locked up for what he did in the 60s. The next day, Betty goes to see her father, and they discuss her work with Bruce and turning down Glenn's offer. We go to more science experiments, and now 40 minutes in, and we finally get Bruce hulking out for the first time. The sad thing about this film is the Incredible Hulk show's effects were more believable and more realistic than the shitty CGI that we are getting now. Why is it that a show that was made in the 70s has better effects than something made in the 2000s? Fuck this movie! The Hulk tears up the facility until he comes face to face with Bruce's father, and they share a tender moment as if he remembers his father before the Hulk breaks away. Betty goes to tell Bruce what happened at the facility, and he tells her about his father. General Ross comes in and basically demands to know what happened, and tells Betty to stay away from him. Betty then goes to visit Bruce's father, but of course he's cryptic and doesn't give much information. Ross and Banner go back and forth on what Bruce knows, and Ross gives Banner a warning.
Jill. One more thing. If you ever come within 1,000 yards of my daughter again.
At night, the Banners talk over the phone, and Bruce's answers are finally answered, and his dad reveals he sent his dogs to attack Betty, but before Bruce can get to her, Glenn attacks him, pissed that the project has been pulled. Glenn then learns the hard way not to piss off Bruce. Hulk goes in to make sure Hulk goes to make sure Betty is safe as we see how shitty the effects really are side by side, the wires picking up Connolly before a group of CGI'd Hulk dogs appear and attack our green giant. But of course it doesn't take long for the Hulk to take them down. Before he de-hulks the next morning, the two discuss how his hulking out takes place. Betty then betrays Bruce's trust.
It's okay, I got you. I'm sorry. Are you okay?
What an ungrateful bitch! He saves her life. She betrays his trust. Bitch is moving to the friend zone. Bruce is lifted via helicopter to a military base while Ross defends his actions to his daughter, with her demanding to know more what's going on. Jumping to David Banner, who is now inside Bruce's testing facility, he forces himself into the gamma as we watch shitty-ass blood effects on his cut hand. A security guard comes in and we see David use his new powers.
That I am separate from you.
Bruce wakes up and him and Betty walk the military area and try to remember their past, including going through the abandoned house he used to live in, finding nothing. Ross finds out his boss has taken over the whole situation, pissing off Ross himself. Glenn then decides it's time to poke the beast and begins tasing the shit out of him and beating him unconscious and experimenting on him against his will. Betty heads home to see a waiting Dave, who warns her of the trouble he and Bruce are in, and we get David's real feelings.
Himself. That if I turn myself in now, peacefully, and before he puts me away forever, that he would let me see my son for one last time. Could you do that for me?
Well, damn! This movie actually has an emotion outside of... I almost had a tear there. Bruce wakes up in the tank, auto-hulking, and Glenn does everything he can to stop him, including putting him inside the world's best Elmer's glue. But of course it doesn't work, as Hulk begins a rampage of the facility till he makes his way out and runs away. The Snorefest continues as we see the Hulk derail the entire military, trying to just get away from them. Ross calls in the president to get his clearance back, and Ross himself goes to search for Hulk, which just leads to another helicopter chase around the desert. Ross figures out where Hulk is headed and calls Betty to warn her of his arrival. The Hulk hunt eventually ends up in space. Love the falling out of space thing, but Iron Man did it so much better in Avengers. He begs her dad to let her try to calm the beast within the Hulk. He agrees, and it's not long before the Hulk is surrounded by military men as he slowly calms down and reverts back to Bruce. With both banners in captivity, the two begin talking to each other to learn more about everything, and David does everything he can to piss off his son to make the Hulk come back out. David then chews on a cord, becoming a giant electric monster.
Watch me go! Hit it.
The two massive beings begin their fight that leads them from the clouds, and we watch how much power David has in his absorption powers. Not wanting to give his father the win, the Hulk releases all of his anger overfeeding his father.
Take it back. It's not stopping.
The movie ends with Ross dropping a bomb on the Hulk, and the Rosses reminisce over the phone. We see that Bruce is still alive as he defends a village from bandits. So there you have it. One of the worst things that ever happened to the Hulk when it comes to live action film. Thankfully, 5 years later, we got introduced into the new version of the Hulk, this time with Marvel's actual influence, as the film The Incredible Hulk is put into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. 10 times better than the piece of shit I just sat through. Either way, I'm your superhero critic, and I'll stay super as long as you stay awesome.